My name is Abraham Sarilla, and the episode of today is about people moving to Houston or people who grew up in Houston, Texas. Houston is one of the most diverse city in the whole country. A lot of people are moving here in Texas, specifically in Houston. So, if you're thinking about moving to Houston and are curious what is the life in Houston, then this is the episode for you. Today we have some guests, good friends of mine who were born here in Houston, other ones were born in the States or overseas. So we're gonna go and talk about their experiences living in Houston and growing up in Houston and what Houston has to offer. So with that, I would like to start by thanking you guys for taking the time for this, my first episode. I really appreciate it. And with that, let's start with introductions. How about you, Jill?
Hi, Abram. Thanks for having me. Hope everyone finds this of some interest. My name is Jill Loss. I have been in Houston for probably 14, 15 years now. I've spent the first third of my life in San Antonio, Texas, which is where I was born, second third in Oklahoma City, and then I've been here this last third of my life. I guess that dates me if you want to do the math on that. I'm a microbiologist by training, and I am a scientific product director here in the Texas Medical Center, which is the largest in the world. And I'd definitely like to talk a little bit more about that for your listeners.
Of course, for sure. Matthew?
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Ojeda. I was born in Peru, in Lima, Peru. And I've been living here in Houston for 22 years. I emigrated here when I was 12. I'm a microbiologist as well, and I also work in the medical center in Houston.
All right, thank you, Matthew. And finally, Patrick.
Hello, everyone out there. My name is Patrick. I'm Persian by descent, first generation born here in America. My parents, all Iranian otherwise, spoke up. We grew up speaking Farsi. And I'm currently a third year medical student. But I had to sadly leave Texas. I went to Florida and currently live in Lakeland, a small town between Orlando and Tampa, part of the rotation. However, Houston was home to me. It was home to me for a long time. I'd say about 20 years, give or take 1 or 2 years from that. And I spent directly living in Houston since I was 5 years old. 27 now, I'll just go ahead and say it. That's me.
All right, awesome, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. So, what led you to Houston? I mean, for Matthew and Jill, what was the reason why you came to Houston? And I guess for you, Patrick, what's the reason why your family moved to Houston? Let's start with you, Jill.
Sure. So when I did high school in Oklahoma City and started college there, I wasn't really confident on what I wanted to do as a major. I tried many different things. I think that's pretty common for our generation. I was working as an equine vet tech. I have a background in horseback riding, and so that was my first foray into anything in a medical setting. And I really liked some of the basic microbiology that we did on some of the specimens on site at the equine clinic. And I kind of decided that I would like to pursue microbiology. And so looking at different colleges just around this region of the country that had a microbiology program. There was a great one in Houston, University of Downtown. And so I was looking forward to returning to Texas as a native San Antonian. And so that's what brought me back to Houston. And one thing has led to another. I did undergrad here, I did graduate school here, and then I've started my career here as well.
Awesome, thank you. How about you, Matthew?
Okay, well, I guess I have the traditional 90s immigrant experience. My parents, were both administrators in Lima, Peru in the 90s. They, underwent the whole transition of government back then in the 90s with the Fujimori government. And that led them to realize that there was not a stable future for the country, both economically and socially in Lima. So my father mainly decided to seek other opportunities. And he had connections. He had family here in Houston. He emigrated first. once he saw that he could make a future here with the family, he called for us, and we came. It was mainly a reason for us to, have better opportunities, educational opportunities, economic opportunities. And yeah, we've been here for, like I said, 22 years now. I did, middle school, high school, college. I did my master's here. And yeah, I think overall it was a good decision, a decision that, um, we have not wasted, and we have seeked a lot of opportunities from it. And I think it has worked out well for us as a family.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. I could say the same thing too. Patrick.
Well, given that I was probably 5 years old, didn't have much of a say as to where I was going, but my family, of course, equally so, wanted to establish a future place to plant and actually grow. And Houston was where my aunt had been living, and she worked with Continental Airlines at the time. So add some more international to that. But regardless of which, we did end up moving here to Houston, and it just grew on us. It's just the way the city is balanced is you can get anything you need from any background you come to. So we ended up coming here, and I grew up, went to college at UH, and stories from there.
Awesome. And so going through the good things in Houston. So what was the good thing about growing up in Houston or living in Houston? What's the thing that you like the most?
Well, I guess two things. One, since my husband is on the call, I'll say that I've gained a husband by coming to Houston. Yeah, no, I've made wonderful friends here. I think the best thing for me about Houston is the Texas Medical Center. As a scientist, it's really one of the best places in the world to work. Both Matthew and I, have met so many wonderful friends, and so many people are from so many different countries. And with that, of course, comes wonderful food. So that would be my second favorite thing about being here, is that it seems like any time of night, any day, if you're craving something specific, you can go find it just a few blocks away.
That's true. That's true. I've been in different cities here in the States, and I think that Houston is very unique just because everybody's mixed. Everybody's in the same spot, and the food is amazing. That's no joke. Yes, for sure. I'm sorry, Matthew. I know I cut you off. So
no worries. I guess I wanted to take a stab at it. Something that I can say about Houston, of course, again, continuing with the whole cultural trend of the conversation, is that in my teenage years, of course, when I immigrated Peru, one of the concerns, I guess, unbeknownst to me, was the fact that I was not going to have the same Peruvian teenage upbringing. However, I got to meet Abram, I got to meet other Peruvian friends, and I had that, Peruvian connection throughout my teenage years, throughout my 20s, and it continues on to this day. We all play soccer together sometimes, and the connection remains. So I think that, one of the great things that Houston has is the ability to relate people in groups by culture, and at the same time interrelate those groups. You have the Vietnamese, you have the Latin Americans, the Africans, just to mention some examples, and they all, as in turn, get to interact amongst each other. And I think that's super rich, and that's super fortunate for the United States to have such a city where we can all interrelate and commingle like that, and learn from each other, and at the same time have that underlying commonality of being American at the same time, or being new Americans. So I think that's really important for the nation as a whole, for the country, and it states and highlights the whole melting pot, nature of the country.
no, that is so true. I mean, I think we all love to travel internationally, and something I noticed is that the same experience that you can get overseas, somehow you can get it in Houston, just for the fact that you have people from everywhere that you can interact with, have conversations, learn about what they do, and also try their food, which is a very big component of learning somebody else's culture. And you can find that here in Houston, which I find it amazing.
That question has so many great answers, I will say. For one thing, and I will definitely circle back to food on this because there's no way you can not talk about food if you're from Houston. If you've been to Houston, you know that. But I lived in Dubai for about a year, and there used to be this little village that came in. It was called Global Village, where for 4 months out of the year, they would have goods and merchants from every little country, and they would all sit there and try to sell and barter, and it's fun. It's a whole thing. Houston's like that 24/7, all the time. You're going to find anything you need. I was with a friend of mine who was from Mexico, and she wanted to go get some food, some Mexican food. You can't just go to any Mexican restaurant. You got to go to that proper part of Mexico's restaurant because you can get it that narrowed down to the region of the country that you want that food to come from. And that goes on and on for the rest of the world's cultures who are all commingling in Houston. It's a city of young professionalism. You get all these people who are scientists and medical personnel in a city that is a capital for medicine and research. And people fly in from around the world just to receive treatment in Houston. It's insane, So you can really get anything you want. You want to go down the artistic route or the scientific route. You're going to commingle with so many other people of all around the world that, like Matthew said, commonality that we're all American. This is what America was supposed to look like, I'd like to think. And hopefully we'll keep growing.
Now that we went through the good things, how about the bad things? What are the things that you don't like from Houston? I mean, there are a couple of things that I could say too.
Yeah, of course.
let me take a stab at that first, I guess.
Okay, go for it.
So growing up in Houston, growing up since I was 12, I've noticed that the rains have taken a toll in Houston. The weather. I think the weather throughout this last 2 decades has taken a really big toll in the city. I think there has been a lot of projects to try to alleviate residual waters accumulating in the city, but I mean, just a few months ago, we had a couple of tornadoes. Just a month ago, I believe we had bad weather around Pasadena, and that devastated all of Pasadena, or a large part. I think the city might have to invest a lot more in proper roads, the quality of the roads, and also public transportation is a big issue. I mean, with a city that keeps growing and growing, a metroplex, not just the downtown area, but the suburbs, the whole metroplex area needs to be well interconnected by a proper system of public transportation that is accessible just to every strata of the society. So I think those two issues are the issues that I feel have more room for us to grow, where we can grow more and have more improvements in.
I think what the issue that Houston had, and that's just a personal opinion, maybe other cities as well, is they didn't plan too much ahead. And the type of weather we're having right now is something that they didn't think we were going to have. But anyway, so Jill, what is the one thing or the things you don't like about Houston?
Yeah, so it's going to overlap a lot with what you guys said. I think, the hot topic or, the big thing that people worry about when they move to Houston, it's something I experience with as we bring on new staff in my workplace, is everyone is worried about the hurricanes. And we kind of have this joke here, right, that as soon as you've lived through your first hurricane, you can officially call yourself a Houstonian if you weren't a native one already. I've done two. That is not something that I guess is the city's fault. That we just see this happening more and more with climate change. I think that, to me, he was not a city planner and no background in that or civil engineering. I think the city I think Hurricane Harvey, our most recent hurricane in 2017, seemed to be a wake-up call. One of my least favorite things about Houston is that it's very much a concrete jungle. We have the reputation of being the ugliest city in Texas, or maybe the ugliest city in the country. It is a swamp, right? So we don't have like a lot of areas of heavy greenery or parks or mountains like some other cities have. But I do feel like after Hurricane Harvey, to me, it seems like a lot more attention has been paid to raising up buildings, making them more hurricane proof, but also adding more greenery for drainage, being more creative with the drainage system. We've seen a lot of interesting new parks come up that have drainage already incorporated in them. So I think that the city is definitely trying. However, I think it is somewhat of a shock still to people who come from maybe places like Denver or the West Coast, which is known for just its natural beauty, that is not something that we necessarily have upon first sight. And, I do very much like nature. I do wish that the weather was a little bit more conducive to that. But I think that, Houston has so many other good benefits. Not every place is perfect. And I do appreciate some of these changes that the city is taking.
Patrick, how about you?
Well, if I were to follow up on anything here, I'd say, when you make your first batch of cookies and they just don't look right because it's the first time you're kind of going along with it, but man, it tastes really good. I don't know, I might be a little hungry, so I had to put food out there. But, it seems like Houston kind of grew as it was growing at the same time. They weren't planning out exactly how many people were going to be there, And so transportation is the biggest thing, I think, because the roads might need a little work in some places. And especially when you go from one section of the city to the next, it can just change. One light is all it takes. You're in one neighborhood and now you're in another neighborhood completely. The road is different. You have to switch gears into, for get your traction control. I don't know. Sorry. But yeah, so transportation, because in the buildup, we all know rush hour in Houston is not nice. It's not not a sight to see, but the concrete jungle as well. That's the other part. I really do like to see nature, and it's not having that in Houston as much. But I know they're working on it. They are building more parks. They're really trying to push green initiatives. But yeah, there's no mountains.
Something I would like to add, guys. So Jill and I recently went to Mexico City, and I went to Lima, Peru, last year. And every time I go to Latin America, I can see the drastic difference between the infrastructure there and the infrastructure here. Houston is the only city that I have lived in within the States. And I have visited other cities, but I know Houston more in detail, of course. And I can tell you that the difference is very drastic between Houston and Latin America. There's no comparison whatsoever. And I have to say that whatever we may call as bad infrastructure here in Houston is hundreds of times better than what's in Latin America. And that doesn't mean that we should not complain. However, we should, just to put it in perspective, I think we have it really good here, but there is of course room for improvement. And again, especially going back to the whole climate change issue and the weather, it's always important to bring up this topic so that our public officials can prepare the city ahead for more natural disasters. But yeah, I thought that was important for me to bring up the international perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I totally agree. The rest of the world, you can't compare America in terms of that kind of infrastructure. But there are parts of Houston that definitely do need some work that might make you feel like you're in one of those international countries.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, what did I leave my passport behind or something? But the one other thing with the weather too, those hurricanes, because now I live in Florida, and now we have hurricanes. I've been through 3, and we barbecued through one of them because we're used to it. But Houston, yeah, the flooding is a problem to consider.
Yeah, definitely. And just going back to what Jill said, yeah, Houston, yeah, there are certain areas that are nice, but definitely Houston is not a tourist city, right? Like people don't come here they might go for see the NASA, but most of the time people come here to visit family, relative, or friends. It's not people during holidays. People actually leave Houston more than people coming here. So what I tell people is like Houston is a good place to live, but not a place to tour. I mean, sure, there are nice places, but there are better cities.
If you really need some nature, Austin, you just drive over. It's 2 hours away.
Right.
Beautiful hills, beautiful rivers and valleys, and then come back to Houston.
Right.
Isn't that crazy how much it changed with a 2 hour driving? Austin is a different world, right?
It really is. It's 2 hours away.
One thing that for me I didn't like about Houston when I moved here is that it was a very conservative city. Like I wasn't expecting that. I'm also from Peru, and I thought I was living in a very conservative city. I think it have changed now, and so did Houston. So Houston is not as conservative as it was when I moved here, but the whole concept of Latino, African Americans, and the whole thing was completely new to me. And then there is a couple of things that you need to do to be kind of accepted in society, right? Like I'm Latino, so they're expecting me to have this haircut, wearing this type of clothes, eating this type of food. And for me, coming from South America, I had the idea that Latino is a person who was born in a country where they speak a language that came from Latin. And it's a long explanation, but that was my concept. So you're a person who is from Italy is Latino, and France, even Angola, they speak Portuguese in that country in Africa. So for me, they're Latinos. So that's the concept. And believe it or not, that I had a hard time dealing with that. All right, so a few more questions, and I'll be done. But so where do you see Houston going? So with everything that you see in the last decade or years that you've been living here, I don't know, what expectations do you have?
Just to piggyback off what I said earlier, I think the city is going to continue to be creative in its growth, which is great. But what I really see and what I think about in my daily life is the medical center itself. I know I keep coming back to that, but my whole daily world revolves around it. So we're made of many academic institutions and hospitals, research institutes. However, there has not been a strong history of biotech in Houston. The biotech industries have largely been on both the West and the East Coast, and we're very much interested in making Houston the third coast for biotech. So one thing that the Texas Medical Center, as a large overseeing institution, is working on is bringing more biotech to this area. And of course, with that will come jobs. Ground has already been broken on a large biotech complex that will hopefully be opening up anytime now. I can see it from my office window. It's going up and up. There's cranes everywhere. Not only is that going to be great for the medical center to have biotech resources, but it's going to be great for people who are growing their careers within the medical center. Most of us hop around. Matthew and I have both been at multiple institutions in the Med Center. And this will only give those of us who are interested in continuing our careers here more of an experience in the scientific community. There's just going to be more companies to grow into, more companies maybe not to grow into, but to collaborate with if we're staying in our current positions. And that's really, really important. Research is especially collaborative and needs to be to push science forward. And so this is going to be an amazing strength, not only for the medical center, but for Houston in terms of our impact on the scientific fields, in terms of new positions, and I think in terms of continued growth in how Houston is perceived by the rest of the world.
How about you, Matthew?
Well, obviously, there's going to be growth for sure in the next decades. I hope that Houston continues its tradition as one of the largest cities to continue trying to control that growth and continuing trying to focus it in such a way that it benefits everybody. Again, the whole control of residual waters, of rain excess, public transportation. I think those are themes that the city needs to continue to manage really carefully. I think we need to put aside differences, political differences, differences in how we approach moral subjects. We need to put those aside a lot more than what we have been doing, especially in the political world, in the local politics. Those things need to be pushed aside, and we need to focus more on infrastructure, fair growth for the city, and we need to keep up with it. Otherwise, we're going to devolve into uncontrolled growth, resemble things that I see unfortunately in Latin America, and to keep up with the growth of the nation as well. I think Houston we owe ourselves the responsibility of continuing with controlled growth.
Some of the good things I see coming from Houston's growth, of course, medically, that's going to expand. Biotech sounds fantastic addition into Houston, I think. There's 4 medical schools in Houston, and the new one was just opened up at University of Houston. That's a whole other medical school. They're expanding, medically speaking. School education is the top of Texas's state budget. Anytime you have education, they're going to pay for it. I mean, Texas wants to educate, which is great. So schools are growing, medicine is growing. My other concern, though, is Texas Houston especially has a huge oil industry. Oil and engineering, chemical engineering. The country's kind of starting to shift towards green, right? We're starting to make these changes. What's that going to do? What are they going to do with it? There's a lot of industry, a lot of pipelines and refineries. The entire east side of Houston no one really even wants to live in that side because it's so much pollution and industry. So what are they going to do with that? I mean, is that going to slowly change? Are they going to rapidly change it? It's going to affect the job market or not? It's hard to say. So that's one thing to consider, especially with climate changing. And now we have the weather to concern about. One hurricane, is that going to just put a pause on the whole city? A huge economic powerhouse for the whole country? That shouldn't be allowed, right? There should be some federal assistance, I think. Inclusivity, that's going to expand, of course. We're just be more diverse, and that's fantastic. And now just make sure we don't overcrowd our facilities either. The infrastructure has to grow as the population grows.
So what advice or what can you tell the people who's thinking about moving to Houston?
Do it.
Come on. Yeah, come on, y'all.
Yeah. You want Southern hospitality, but also to live in the city that runs exceptionally well so far and has plenty to offer. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Do you want cheap housing and have a job that's stable and any access to good that you want from around the world?
That's what I can say as well. In my family, in my career, there has never been shortage of jobs. I have always seen that if somebody really wants to work, there's something open. The only excuse is laziness. There's always work. That's one thing I can say. The food scene, as we have all said, is great. There's always restaurants of various backgrounds popping up. And even though we might not have, the best nature and it may be a flat land kind of city, it's a very warm city. Everybody's willing to help each other. So I think, there's nothing holding anyone back from moving to Houston.
I think, as we all said, in general, we all found it extremely easy to be welcomed by Houston whenever at any age that we moved. Despite like some challenges, I think it didn't take long for all of us on this call to feel like it was home quite quickly. And so I think the same would be said for anybody who came.
Thank you very much, everybody, to participate. And as you can see, I'm very nervous. My accent gets thicker, but that is okay. I will improve through times. And well, once again, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, my guests, for participating.
Yeah, you got it, man.
Thank
Happy to be
you.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, guys.